working day. It's going to be a busy one, another busy one. There are just 15 of them to go until Brexit. A no deal ruled out by Parliament last night, but still nobody seems to have any idea what this final deal may look like. Two vital UK sectors trying to plan for Brexit are medicine and farming. But how exactly can they prepare in amongst all this uncertainty? Well, I'm joined now by Nick von Westenholz, who is the National Farmers Union Director of EU Exit and International Trade. And alongside him, junior doctor and member of the British Medical Association, Dr. Hannah Barham-Brown. Good morning to you both. Right, we'll start with reaction to last night. Dr. Hannah, I'll come to you first. Essentially, Parliament was saying there isn't a will in there for there to be a no-deal Brexit. However, it's not legally binding, so I'm not sure how reassuring that is for the world of medicine today.
Yeah, I think at best it's cautious optimism from today. Fundamentally, we know that there is no Brexit deal which will ever give the NHS the benefits that we have of being in the EU, and this is something we've been saying since before the referendum. However, we know that a no-deal Brexit would be utterly catastrophic for our NHS and British patients, not just within the UK, but within the EU. They could potentially lose all of their health care. That's 190,000 pensioners from the UK living in the EU at the moment who could find themselves without health provision. They move back, that's a huge additional burden on our NHS that we simply can't manage at the moment.
Yeah, Nick, the legal default on the 29th of March is still no deal. How are the farming community reacting to what's going on here in Westminster?
Well, I think probably like the country at large, they're pretty bemused by what's going on here. I mean, when it comes to leaving the EU, there are two ways of doing it. Either you can do it in an orderly fashion with a negotiated deal between the UK and the EU, or in a disorderly fashion, leaving without a deal, potentially in as little as 2 weeks. And despite what happened last night, that, as you say, remains the default. And we've looked closely, made an assessment of what no deal looks like, and it would be disastrous for large tranches of the farming industry.
It's interesting, the Chancellor was just speaking here on Sky News Sunrise a little earlier. He says he's still optimistic that we can leave the EU in an orderly fashion. Today, the vote is about an extension to Article 50, and I think the wider acceptance here is that there will be have to be some kind of extension to, to get a deal if it's agreed over the line and dot all the I's and cross all the T's, or a longer extension to sort out what's going to happen. What does that do for both of your sectors? Dr. Hannah, I'll come to you first.
So I think either way, this is going to be hugely challenging. Yeah. As I say, we're currently in a situation where 1/3 of the EU doctors in this country, that's 10% of our medical workforce, 1/3 of them have told us that they are planning on leaving the UK as a direct result of Brexit. We are already short of doctors. We have NHS staff vacancies of around 100,000 in the NHS at the moment. We lose those doctors and struggle to bring more in, which is going to happen. The government themselves have said that they expect migration into the UK to reduce by 80%. That happens, there is no way we are going to be able to provide the level of patient care we are. And it's the human cost of that, really. Yeah,
it's interesting, isn't it? Because we talk about different sectors planning for Brexit. And Nick, how can farming plan? Because we don't know if there's going to be a deal, what that deal will look like, if there will be no deal at all. So how are the farming industry planning?
With great difficulty, and the uncertainty is already causing big problems in farming. For example, they're struggling to recruit, for example, non-EU workers who make up large parts of the workforce in some sectors. But we talk about extension. I mean, that is just a staging place. I come back to what I said before. Yeah. There's two types of Brexit: orderly or disorderly. And what is really needed is for people to come together and ensure that we can leave in an orderly fashion. And for farmers, that means maintaining access to our largest export market, the EU, where we have 450 million relatively affluent customers. To lose that would be really problematic for farming and food.
Nick, we heard about tariffs yesterday, the government announcing its procedure for if there is a no deal and what would happen to tariffs. And certain industries would be protected. One of them would be the very sensitive area of farming. Did that reassure you at all? Is that...
It reassured us a little, and it was only parts of the farming sector. Some sectors within farming, for example, cereals, so wheat and barley and eggs, are not protected, and there'll be zero tariffs on imports of those products. But I think it was reassuring to hear that the government had recognised that some sectors needed some level of protection, and they've obviously tried to strike a balance between the consumer interest, which is absolutely right. We don't want to see prices in shops shooting up, but also domestic producers, and ensuring that farms don't go out of business and we see large parts of the country are bereft of farming managing that countryside.
Hannah, what would you say finally to MPs who are heading here today, another vote, this time on extending Article 50? What would you say to them on behalf of the medical community about, you know, what this uncertainty is doing to your sector?
I think what needs to be remembered at the heart of all this is the human cost. We have, say, 1 million patients in the UK who are currently reliant on insulin. Less than 1% of that is made in the UK. If we lose our frictionless trade border with France, we are going to struggle to import life-saving medications. Our patients are scared. They're already asking about stockpiling, and our staff are scared. I don't want to give anyone suboptimal care because of a political situation that could have been avoided. So yes, extend it, but fundamentally we believe we need to get this back to the people and allow them to have a final vote. Now we have more evidence on how catastrophic Brexit could be for the NHS.
OK, Dr Hannah Barham-Brown and Nick von Westenholz, thank you very much for talking to us about how the farming sector and how the medical sector are preparing and having difficulties preparing for Brexit.